Hello, my name is Jack Fredrickson, and today I'm going to be speaking to you about the Neolithic Revolution, the changes it brought to early humans' diets, and the associated health consequences. I'm going to begin by speaking about the very first humans and pre-humans, with a focus on their diets. After that, we're going to talk about Mesolithic life, or life in the period immediately preceding the agricultural revolution. Then, we're going to talk about the Neolithic Revolution, also known as the First Agricultural Revolution. Following that, we're going to talk about the consequences that came with this changing diet, and then we're going to wrap it up with a conclusion. Somewhere around 85 million years ago is when primates started evolutionarily diverging from other mammals. From this point on, for the next 20 million years or so, these primates mostly subsisted off insects, before adding fruits and plants to their diet, depending on what was available in their locality. Around 7 million BC is when the first pre-humans began to break away from the evolutionary chain of other apes, and flesh foods began to make up a greater part of their diet. 3.7 million years ago is when the first fully upright bipedal hominid is found in southern Africa, Australopithecus afarensis, meaning southern ape. 2 or 3 million years ago, an ice age causes the Australopithecus line to diverge into a number of different species, including Homo habilis, Homo erectus, Homo neanderthalis, and eventually Homo sapiens, or the modern man. Right around this time, roughly 2.8 million BC, is when we have evidence of the first tools being used by Homo habilis. This ice age both forced these prehumans to advance their technology by creating better tools, clothes, and shelters, as well as caused them to adapt more flexible eating habits. However, it wouldn't be until around 40,000 BC when we would have behaviorally modern humans, with language, culture, ritual burials showing the first signs of religion, and evidence of early art with cave paintings. From here, humans would slowly advance until around 10,000 BC, when the Ice Age ends and humans are able to heavily rely off agriculture. Man's first ancestor was Australopithecus afarensis, meaning southern ape, as it was found in southern Africa. The first evidence of these guys appear around 3.7 million BCE. They were the first mammals that walked upright on two legs, and they were slightly smaller than average humans today, with males being roughly 5 feet and 100 to 150 pounds. They mostly ate plants and fruits, and scientists have shown that they ate some meat, but it wasn't a large part of their diet. The next ancestor we have is Homo habilis. This means handyman, as these people were the first evidence of tools being used. These guys were slightly smaller than their Australopithecus ancestors, standing between 4 and 5 feet and weighing 40 to 100 pounds. Evidence shows they ate wild plants and fruit as well as meat. Evidence for their meat consumption includes cut marks on animal bones and hammerstones used to smash bones in order to eat the marrow inside. While it is confirmed they ate meat, there is still debate about whether they hunted for meat or simply ate meat they scavenged. Another interesting fact is that Homo habilis still had physical adaptations for climbing trees from their primate ancestors. The primary evidence of this is their curved finger bones. The next pre-human that appears is Homo erectus, which appears around 1.7 million BCE. These guys were about the same size as modern humans, though they were stockier and had smaller brains than we do today. This is where hunting and meat consumption becomes a bigger part of our ancestors' diets, though plants were still the primary piece of their diet. Global cooling during their reign forced Homo erectus to adapt a widely varied diet. They'd eat almost anything they could get their hands on, including fruit, berries, shoots, tubers, nuts, insects, eggs, as well as meat from birds, reptiles, and mammals. Another consequence of this ice age and global cooling was that it forced these guys to develop better clothes and shelters. Homo erectus was also the first of our ancestors to commonly use fire. It is also believed that Homo erectus was at least somewhat nomadic, as evidence of them moving from Africa to Asia and Europe occurs around 700,000 BCE, which is about the same time large land mammals began to spread out from Africa. This brings us to the two early humans we're probably most familiar with, Homo sapiens and Neanderthals. The first archaic humans appear somewhere between 500,000 BCE and 200,000 BCE, though it wasn't until 140,000 BCE that humans were anatomically the same as we are today. These early humans also lived during an ice age, so their diet was pretty similar to that of Homo erectus in that they were forced to eat a wide variety of food. In addition to the foods Homo erectus ate, seafood and mollusks became a common food source for coastal people around 33,000 BCE. However, evidence shows some coastal people eating seafood as early as 300,000 BC. In colder areas with less plant life, like Europe and North Asia, hunting became an even bigger part of diets. The Cro-Magnon people in Europe subsisted off hunting large game like mammoths, horse, bison, and caribou. Evidence shows that meat made up almost 50% of their diet. Neanderthals, or Homo neanderthalis, first appear around 150,000 BC. They evolved as a sister species to human and interbred with early humans. Some people today still have Neanderthal DNA. Neanderthals' peak was 90,000 to 30,000 years ago, though they eventually hit an evolutionary dead end and went extinct. Their diet patterns were nearly identical to that of humans existing at the same time. This brings us to life during the Mesolithic period, loosely defined as 20,000 BCE to 10,000 BCE. This is the period immediately preceding the Neolithic Revolution and is sometimes referred to as the Stone Age. It's what people typically think of when they imagine cavemen or hunter-gatherer societies. By this time, people had developed relatively complex, environmentally specialized tools. Some of these included primitive axes, blades, and chisels. While this was before plant domestication, they would still harvest wild barley and wheat and use mortar and pestles to grind it into flour. Mesolithic people also practiced primitive game management in that they would start forest fires to promote the growth of grasslands, encouraging animal herds to graze there. Mesolithic people also used bows and arrows as well as spears to hunt large mammals like gazelle, antelope, and deer. Besides these mammals, Mesolithic people's diets consisted of a wide variety of root vegetables, wild pulses, beans, nuts like almonds, pistachios, and hazelnuts, apples, and seafoods like fish, crabs, mollusks, and snails. As previously mentioned, even before the Neolithic Revolution, hunting and gathering people had known the basic idea of agriculture, that plants would regrow season after season, and that grains can be harvested and processed to produce food. Somewhere around 10,000 BCE, the last ice age ended, which caused many species of large game to go extinct, leading to food pressures on the Neolithic people. It is worth mentioning that overhunting may have also played a role in these extinctions. While the Ice Age ending did cause a shortage in game, it also promoted the growth of wild grasses and cereals, which are soon domesticated as a means for subsistence. Agriculture, even Neolithic agriculture, could also support many more people than hunting and gathering could. Hunting and gathering lifestyles could support one person per every 10 miles, whereas Neolithic agriculture could support 100 people for every 10 miles. Sheep and goats were domesticated around 9,000 BCE, with cattle and pigs being domesticated shortly after. Around 7,500 BCE, wheat, barley, and legumes are domesticated, and meat consumption falls dramatically. The idea of agriculture travels around the world similarly to how religions do, and by 5000 BCE, agriculture has spread to every inhabited part of the planet besides Australia. After the success of agriculture, the population explodes and cities and urban areas are developed around 4000 BCE. If you look at the ratio of plant foods to animal foods and diets, in the Paleolithic era, plants made up 65% of diets, After the Neolithic Revolution, plants make up 90% of their diet. Thus, in 3,000 or 4,000 years, the life of man had changed more radically than in all of the preceding 250,000 years. I really like this quote from Robert Braidwood because it shows just how rapidly humans evolved in that time, as well as in the time from the first agricultural revolution to today. In the same paper that quote comes from, Braidwood talks about studying Jarmo, an early agricultural village located in present-day Iraq. You can look at the map and see where Jarmo is in relation to the rest of the Fertile Crescent, where the Neolithic Revolution first took place. This village was occupied sometime around 7,500 to 6,000 BCE by about 150 people. Even for that time period, Jarmo was advanced and had domesticated barley, as well as 2 kinds of domesticated wheat, which they processed with mortars and pestles, rubbing stones, and querns. They also had domesticated dogs, goats, and possibly sheep. It is worth noting that at this time, animals were domesticated for meat and leather rather than milk or wool. Domestication wasn't used to harvest milk until around 4000 BCE. Evidence at Jarmo indicates that they were not entirely reliant on agriculture for their food and still did some hunting and gathering. People also hypothesize that they were able to trade with other people far away, as they had discovered obsidian tools from Lake Van, which was 200 miles away in Turkey, as well as shells that came from the Persian Gulf. So we've talked about how big of a change the advent of agricultural was, but what were the consequences of it? There are a few, both positive and negative. Some of the positive consequences were the invention of cities and urban areas, only leading to further human ingenuity. The development of agriculture allowed humans to have more free time where they otherwise would have been roaming the forests looking for food. This additional free time led to the development of other skills and inventions, some of which include weaving, smithing and metallurgy, and the wheel and plow. Unfortunately, agriculture also brings negative consequences, though. This increased population led to fiercer competition of resources. While there was warfare among primates and prehumans, after the advent of agriculture, this warfare became more organized and cruel. In addition to that, the development of cities led to environmental consequences like deforestation, overgrazing, and soil erosion. Finally, this change in diet led to negative health defects, which I'll cover more in depth on the next slide. After the advent of agriculture, people became much more reliant on grains and carbohydrates for their nutrients. This reduction in variety of diet carried negative health effects, and agriculturalists ended up developing anemia and other vitamin deficiencies. This reliance on grains and carbohydrates also causes dental caries, an oral disease that causes demineralization of the enamel and other tissues. You can see an example of dental caries in this photo. After the Neolithic Revolution, rates of dental caries soared due to their increased rate of carbohydrate consumption. After people started living in cities, infectious diseases like syphilis, tuberculosis, leprosy, and hookworms also skyrocketed. This is evident by looking at skeletons recovered from this time that were damaged from these diseases. This is because cities were much more dense and crowded than humans were used to living in. In addition to this, the populations of these cities were living sedentary lifestyles, which led to their water sources becoming contaminated. Another negative health effect of the Neolithic Revolution is that following it, many agriculturalists show evidence of being malnourished and much smaller than humans were before agriculture. However, some people believe this may be because of the increased rates of infectious diseases rather than a lack of food. Another interesting note is that scientists have proven that agriculturalists had smaller bones than foragers because their lifestyle was less physically demanding. In summary, we talked about the history of early humans and prehumans, the life of people in the Mesolithic era, the Neolithic Revolution, and some of the consequences associated with it and its changes in diet. I became interested in this topic after reading Ishmael by Daniel Quinn last summer. This book is not academic, but it focuses on the agricultural revolution and the consequences we face from it today, mostly from a sustainability viewpoint. Since this is an anthropology of food class rather than focus on sustainability today, I decided to look at the changes in diet the agricultural revolution caused and the consequences of the diet change. The thing I've found most interesting so far is the in-depth understanding I've gained about prehistory and early humans and prehumans. Some related topics I would like to do more research about are the development of language and cultures in this time period, life in early cities, as well as the very first forms of government, prehistoric warfare, and megafauna. In my research, I found a little bit of information on these topics, but not enough to claim a thorough understanding of it. Here's a list of a few of the most important resources to my research. Braidwood's paper gave a thorough history of the Neolithic Revolution, as well as detailing evidence he found at Jarmo. Larson looked at a lot of the physical changes caused by adjustments in diet. Schrodinger analyzed skeletons found at various archaeology sites in order to determine the plant-to-animal ratio in diets. And Nick Namian gave a thorough timeline of human evolution from primates and other mammals. Thanks for watching my presentation. Please feel free to leave a comment if you have any questions on anything I covered, and I'll be happy to answer it to the best of my ability. Thanks again.